Yeah, good morning, and thank you very much to the organizers to organize this event here and invite me to it. In this case, today my role is not to report on our own research in several areas that we are doing, but more give you a synthesis of several years now, of 2 years of brainstorming with many research institutions, research groups and companies about how we can make sure that in the light of what Marta just said, namely the big focus on big data and changed perspectives, how we can position ourselves in language technology, how we can make sure that we don't miss any opportunities, that we enjoy funding for the major unsolved problems in the next years. So how do we argue, how do we set up ourselves, how do we connect ourselves, what are the ways that we have to take? So, and there are two stories, of course, in Europe, and Marta didn't mention them explicitly, but both were mentioned. One is, of course, multilinguality, multilingualism of the European society, and the other one is the big business opportunities of natural language processing, and both are closer together than they may seem at first glance. And actually what Europe is doing by granting equal rights to all of its languages is like in all the speeches, the speech before and all the speeches, it's taken for granted. It's taken for granted like the open borders of Schengen, like the euro, but all of these are experiments. The euro is an experiment, as you know, that has to be defended now, it's under pressure. Schengen gets more and more under pressure, and it will be under more pressure in the future as the social gaps is widening in the world. And also this policy is under pressure, because if you see already that with the admittance of new member states, there cannot be any translation more from any language into any other language. So many things that used to be translated in the past on the European level are not, and the costs for maintaining the multilingualism are really going up quite drastically. So therefore, actually, if we have now this free Europe, where we have open borders for services, for people, for money, the last remaining borders are the language borders, as you know. And technology can play a role. It's sometimes blamed to be part of the problem, but actually it can be the source of the solution. It's blamed to be part of the problem, just like the Gutenberg revolution led to the extinction of many languages. Right now, modern technology is blamed as being part of the problem for now the disappearance of 2,000 of the 6,000 languages within the next few decades. And that could be even more drastic. But if we play the game right, if technology catches up fast enough, technology can play the role in preserving these languages. So that's the important message. So the major challenges then that have been identified, and what I'm giving you is now the gist of many meetings of hundreds of people and hundreds of organizations. I will later mention who was part of that. Many of you were actually, thank you, so participating, and others indirectly. So the three major challenges is preserving the European cultural and linguistic diversity. The second one is securing at affordable cost the free flow of information and thought across boundaries, across language boundaries. And that was what Marta mentioned earlier too. And there's really very concrete plans. And the third one is to provide each language community with the most advanced technologies for communication, information, knowledge management, so that in the end maintaining their mother tongue doesn't turn into a disadvantage, so against the bigger languages. And LT is already surrounding us, it's in many places, but we have not really managed to make it a big brand name LT. So if you go out and say, language technology, do you know it? Have you ever seen it? And people would say, no, what does it look like? What does it smell? Yeah, does it have a smell? So, but actually it's in the spell, grammar checkers, and voice styling, and web search, and speech generation, in language learning, and so on, and so on, and so on. Yeah? So it's in many places. And now during the last 18 months, we have been witnessing the breakthrough, but it went so fast. Many breakthroughs went so fast, we didn't really realize it yet because we are all working on our own problems. But so it started, for instance, when a company that doesn't have very perfect technology, it's called Autonomy, was bought for 8 billion euros by HP. Or IBM Watson, we will hear, I hope, by Zadrozny talk about it, kind of impress the world by letting their system, letting a computer, after they already beat the world chess champion, so let the computer beat the best quiz champions in a nationally televised show. And Google, that didn't cause much discussion, renamed its division Search to Knowledge. We will hear a talk later on the knowledge graph and by Enrico, where he is. Okay, and we will hear by Enrique. We will hear a talk about that. Siri has gone on the iPhone. People are still making fun about misunderstandings and so on, but it's there now. Google Translate is used now. If you see the numbers of pages translated, it's the hugest translation service in the world. Even if it doesn't translate perfect translations. Not a single perfect translation is perfect, but nevertheless, it's used all over. And all large IT corporations, EC, European Parliament, European Patent Office, they all deploy now the new generation of translation technology. So we could say, oh great, it's there already. So do we really need basic research? The downside is, even if now technology can beat the best champions, and even if one system can translate in 57 languages, which no person can do, we are far from language capabilities that come even close to human being. We cannot translate the full meaning of any non-trivial paragraph into a meaning representation language, for instance. Or may it be a fairy tale that every child understands. Or we cannot reliably translate a journal article, really reliably, without any post-editing. So it's the same thing as with artificial intelligence. We beat the world chess champion and think now we have artificial intelligence because we can beat the most, but it's not true. We cannot even mimic a 2-year-old. So in the one sense, we can, so this is the beginning and the direction. The research takes now a different direction. The research goes more in the direction, not anymore as in the 50s, the AI people in the old type of AI tried to copy the human being, but we try to stress those capabilities that humans don't have. For instance, talk almost without accents in 34 languages, but a machine can do that. And work on them and try to make the technology a better partner for humans, instead of trying to substitute the human by it. So in that sense, language technology is a key enabling technology, such as network technology or database or web technology. It's an enabling technology for many other things. But it's much more complex because the languages are so big, and they are so irregular, and there are so many of them, and there are so many variants. And why do we call it key enabling technology? And this is very important, how we position ourselves in the national research programs and in the EU, so that in the end we are not just a little part of the data value chain, but that the importance is really seen. Language technology will overcome communication barriers between people and technology, or between people speaking different languages, but it will also, and here it gets closer to the data, and I will come back to this problem of data value chain and the role of language later. It will unleash the full power of information technology for managing humankind's accumulated knowledge, because most of it is not in pictures, but it is in text. Most of knowledge that's passed on from generation to generation in the mother tongue, as you said, pointed out, from generation, is in language. And for accessing creative content, and for dealing with the information overflow. So, and one important part is, of course, which was also mentioned by Marta, future internet and multilingual web. If the web is now the main, this is the main means for exchanging, sharing, storing, passing on information, it needs to speak in the languages of the different people, and it already does so in a way, but not really. So most of the society in the world is still cut off linguistically from most services in the world, so that's still the case. And but we are working together with the W3C on, especially in this project Multilingual Web, which is now called LT Web, the follow-up project, which we are coordinating and doing together. Felix Nasati with many others are working together with the W3C very closely, and many companies now being interested in that. So, and recently when we had this Startstuhl seminar that Marta mentioned was really interesting, because we had from all over the world some of the best people in semantic web technologies and some of the people from language technology. I'll come back to this topic later, what some of the outcome was. So in the European factors, I don't have to stress here, it's clear that Europe is a main user of language technology. Parliament, the DGT is using now Moses-based translation and other translation systems. They hired some of our best people, and so for installing and improving these systems, the Parliament, the Patent Office. The Patent Office actually turned to Google for help, but nevertheless they apply new technology. Some do it with Google, some do it with European. It depends on their needs. So, and the markets, I don't want to talk about markets here, so I don't, but I just give a size of the field, because all these numbers, so all these big numbers. Now, after the Greek crisis, we only talk in billions, and so that's but the future markets, they are not limitless. They are limited for language technology. They are limited by the number of people on Earth and the number of the devices they carry around. So that's a very severe limit, but it's a very big one as for a market. So, and the demand is growing fast for several factors: globalization, explosion of knowledge, creative content, and the spread of technology in new regions. And language is important for communication with technology, not just with computers. That can be robots, can be other devices. And there are these two factors for us in Europe: the integration and the multilingual markets, that I don't need to stress here. And now Marta put what her people put on her slides. She said, she differentiates. She said, okay, this is what my staff told them. We have the best research teams. So of course we have the best. But later when we come a little bit, of course, we have to struggle. It's not only that in research we have very strong competition, and in fact the very well-funded DARPA and other funded US research is ahead in many fields. But nevertheless, it's true that in certain fields, if you take machine translation, if you look, for instance, who's building the Google machine translation, they are Europeans. And if now people like Rodek Zadorozny is talking on what they do with IBM, Watson, and if you take some of the other people there, like Bran Bogurayev, some of you know, they're also European. So actually, the European we have the possibility. We have the possibility, but actually the commercialization, the uptake also is a real problem in Europe. Has always been, and it still is. And so we are competing, but then there's another thing, and that I want to turn your attention to. If you take the number of complexity of our languages and applications, then our research is, as opposed to DARPA funding or other National Science Foundations, spotty and really underfunded. I will give you an idea. So the European language industry is big, but there are many small companies, and their goal is to be bought by Nuance or Google. So very fast as they can. So, and it's very fragmented. So, and reality is then different. We are losing talents. The main figures are Europeans behind many of these things, but localization world, Trados, those were all Europeans who built up the multilingual stuff in the world. Still, multilingual, all these things are dominated by Taos and so on. It's all Europeans. But Europe is losing it right now because LT research is really weak and too slow. Many languages are badly covered. So in our language white papers that have now been published, you see some of them here on the desk. You cited from one of them. We worked on them for more than 2 years. More than 200 national experts authored white papers on 30 European languages. 30 white papers all published by Springer. Yeah? They are all published, they are all on the web, but you can buy them for Springer, then you get them for, then you have to pay some money, but get them in a nice cover. And so, and there are 8,000 of these copies are printed now, or have been printed, are sent to politicians and journalists. And actually yesterday at the European Day of Languages, you saw that we had quite a bit of press coverage. Yeah? I don't know about your languages and in your countries, but in many, many countries, these white papers were cited in the press. We had very, very good press coverage on many languages. And yesterday we counted more than 30, with 30 that we found ourselves, 30 major newspapers and so reporting on it. So the methodology was, of course, we needed to simplify it. Yeah? How can you really see how a language and its technology and its resources and its demand and its status in the digital world is? Yeah? That was the topic. So we did lots of data collection and tables and discussions and so on. And in the end, it's like in business. It's not rocket science. It's not really, you cannot, it's guesswork in the end. Yeah, it's estimates. But nevertheless, we tried very hard. So there were rankings done on technologies and resources in several areas, and all these people who are down here, they took part in the final discussion. Some of you were there, thanks for your participation. And then when the discussions were finished. And what came out then is quite a lopsided distribution of European languages as to how well they are covered. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Down there are many, many tables that kind of show why this is the case. Yeah? In language and in speech, and of course, English is not excellently covered. Yeah? We know that, and it would be crazy to say Google covers English excellent. Yeah? So, but some languages are really weak and with no support, and others only with fragmentary support, so that we think actually language technology in Europe is not in very good shape. So there are even support for English is being perfect. Several languages receive the weakest score in all 4 areas. Yeah? And at least 21 European languages of the 30 are not well covered. It's simply insufficiently covered. Yeah? So, and this is some of the findings. So, and let me go through. But now I will say why this is the case. Look at this. This is the publications from the major, from let's say the 4 maybe most known, depending on your feelings, publication fora for language technology, the ACL, the Journal of Computational Linguistics, DMNLP, and Coling. And here is what languages do the papers treat. Yeah? That they are. More than half are in English. Yeah? So more than half of the articles are in English. Then is Chinese, yeah? And then there is German and a few others, and then it goes very far down. And most stuff is not treated at all. Yeah? So many languages are not, most languages are not treated at all. But even this frequency distribution is kind of shocking for the people who claim now that we have the best research teams and we do all the best for our languages. So either we have to try harder, or we have to somehow make sure that, because also now some European teams, in order to be published, they work on English. So the Norwegians, they refuse sometimes to work on Norwegian, and some groups, although there is lots of stuff to do for Norwegian, but they want to get. So we need to make sure that this is better covered. We need a clear focused program, a well-coordinated community, and adequate funding. But for that, we need a program and all the actors behind. And this is the problem now. And when Marta Naj said, please send us your ideas, actually we knew that if we send a few ideas from the language community, this will not suffice. Even if there are 100 ideas, we will not get in, because some of the other fields are much, much stronger in that, in lobbying. And they have bigger companies behind them. So what we did is, we started in this MetaNet, this network of excellence, a vision process in which we built a strategic research agenda, and we started to build this resource exchange infrastructure, MetaShare, and did some research, funded some research in some areas. And now we have this network of excellence with 60 research centers in 34 countries, and they have worked together to write the white papers, a vision paper, and then this strategic research agenda that we will submit officially. We know the deadline for making proposals and suggestions has passed. If you still have something very urgently, you may try to put it in, but actually, while we are speaking, the final editing is being done on this thing. Many of you have contributed. Yeah? I will report the upshot of it, yeah? Give you the gist, kind of, or the central propositions. So, and in addition to this network of excellence with the 60 research centers around that, we founded this Multilingual Europe Technology Alliance with 638 members, organizations in 47 countries. Members are not always organizations. There are about 200 companies represented in there. And so now we are at a point where when this process that Marta mentioned, namely that people can try to influence the contents of the very, very big 80 billion research and innovation program Horizon 2020, when it comes to making that, then we will have more impact. It will be more than just 60 people sending in emails. So we have this strategic research agenda that we will put in. And the priority themes of that, there are three major priority themes. One is called translation cloud, but it should be more than a cloud. It's more like a translation sky or a translation universe. It's these services for translation. And now, I have to tell you, give you one background. If you do something like this for a multi-year program, it's a 6-year program by the European Union, you have to combine two components into this. One is science fiction. Yeah, sounds strange, but and the other one is real steps that industry thinks can help them in the next years. Why do you have both? You need both. You need the science fiction part, you need the more courageous utopian part, because already the proposals made by companies like Google and IBM are pretty science fiction. Yeah? So if you take, you cannot now, not science fiction, but they are ambitious, let's call it ambitious. Yeah? So, but you cannot stay behind. We cannot say we want to reach in 2020 what IBM or Google are proposing for 2016 or 17. So there needs to be a very ambitious, part to that. And we believe that it's not too ambitious, that we can stand behind it, because many researchers are standing behind it. But then there needs to be steps for the next years that show that intermediate results on that way to 2020 will be useful for industry, for services, for solutions. Okay, so one is the translation cloud, very important in Europe, of course, and there's lots of detailed ideas how to build a platform. That's what Marta also mentioned, how to build a platform that allows all the small and medium enterprises and even research projects to tap into, to offer via the web multilingual services, cross-lingual services, yeah? Because otherwise these come, why should anybody not click at Google, yeah, and click at a very, very good Latvian to Maltese translation? And so if they are not set up in a prominent place also, if they don't have the chance also to. So this infrastructure. The second one we called social intelligence, and I will say a little more about it. It's basically a little beyond business intelligence, adding to business intelligence one or two other components. And the last one then comes more from the colleagues that work on what would be the Siri of the future, yeah? The socially aware, emotional, interactive assistant. So those are the three basic areas, and they have to do with each other. First of all, there are some core technologies now. This is a sign of maturation of our field. In the beginning of the work in the statistical paradigm in language processing, there was not so much that could be commonly used, except maybe for classification algorithms. Yeah? But nowadays, if you look around, if you get a very good parser, not only Franz Och at Google is using it, yeah, but also the speech people are using it, and the people at text analytics are using it. So the importance of monolingual core technology, yeah, or core technology has grown again, so very important. And then the translation part, of course, if you have social intelligence, and I will say something about this in a moment, yeah, if you get something like this, it needs to be multilingual. Yeah? Also, business intelligence needs to be multilingual if you have customers and partners in many languages. So, and it needs to have interfaces, yeah, speech interfaces. And the speech part needs to be multilingual, and speech part needs to have access to knowledge. So these three things are intertwined, yeah? They are connected, they are not standing by themselves. There are many connections among them. So the idea, for instance, in this translation is this services in which translation brokering can be done. There can be specialized translations, even together with named entity recognition, many other services, and it needs to be trusted because some European companies refuse their people to use, they even switch off Google. They're not allowed to use Google because data are going there, yeah? They are scared, so you need trusted services for all of that stuff actually. Yeah? And this is one of the more futuristic visions. As you can see here easily that these people have a nice meeting, but you see very clearly that they speak different languages, right? I mean, you see this with the different bubbles. Yeah? So they speak, each of them is in a different bubble. It's called ambient translation. It's something that the speech translation people have played with for a while. They use with, acoustic technology that's directed at people, and that makes sure that you only hear what you are supposed to hear in your bubble, and that you speak. And these people are in the same room and they speak different languages and they can still converse. Yeah? So we don't have that yet, but people in the labs are working on it. Yeah? So they are working on it, and you can extend that to mixes of real and virtual meetings. Again, here you see clearly that they speak different languages. Yeah? And there are many use cases for that, yeah? For corporate, e-democracy, NGOs, experts, and so many. So now let me come very briefly, if I still have the time, to the data view. Yeah, this is very important. That's a very important part because now we are faced. Yeah, there's two. Let me step back for a moment. There's two possible views that you can have in your technologies. Yeah? So far, we had mainly the view that there are people out there who need certain services. For instance, decision support. Yeah? So IBM Watson could be turned into a decision support service. Yeah? That's probably one of the purposes. I hope you will tell us more about it, but for instance, in the medical world or something, it can be decision support. Yeah? Or we want somebody is out there needing a translation. Yeah? So we are more looking at this. Whereas the big data hype has now taken not just the European Union, but many companies to look at it, look at the whole problem also from a different angle, namely the angle of available raw material of resources, and this is this data view. Take the data view as being all the metal ore in the ground, yeah? And now you're not thinking anymore, does the person need a bridge, or does he need something, yeah? Maybe a little crown or filling in his tooth from the metal, yeah? But you are thinking more, what can I do with the ore? You know, what I can do with all that metal? And this is a little bit the vision or the idea now, the way that many of the people in the decision making, that's why you have to understand a little bit why this has turned so much. Yeah? So this is big industry has told the European Union and the member states, there's so much raw material and it's free, it's shared, it's open, it will be linked, and so make some big business out of it. Yeah? So they look at it from that way. And then they define chains, value chains, where you do something with this raw material until it arrives at decision support and can be fed back as raw material in the end. Yeah? So, and there are many language data. Language is just one thing among other data. Yeah? There's text, there's sound, images, numbers, videos. That's what they tell you. Yeah? And then we think, oh, language is just one small building block in this complex world. And so, but it's not really true. Language is something very special here, because if you take search engines and if you take indexing, you only describe and find this stuff with language. Yeah? There may be images, but how do you get them? How do you describe them? How do you link them to other stuff? So language is in sound because of speech, it's in images because of legends and tags, it's in video because of speech, and it's in the very center by binding everything together. So, and when people now do metadata and semantics in the middle, then our friends from semantics, and some of them are we ourselves, they tell you that what they are doing, their languages, their meaning representation languages, they are language independent. Yeah, they are logical. They are not. There's a logic. Nothing has nothing to do with language. Yeah? So it's language independent. So, for instance, like this ontology. Yeah, that's a food ontology, as you can easily see. And so, of course, now metadata are completely language independent. Yeah, so this can be used by anybody in the world who only has a mechanism who can process this piece of food ontology. Yeah, but let's really face it. I mean, the only reason why this language independent and that stuff works is because it's like with programming languages, it lives parasitically on a language. Yeah? In a programming language, we say also go to or while do, and we don't say that in Georgian. Yeah? So it's actually in the middle of this kind of interpretation in the middle, yeah, and finding the concepts and describing them has to be done in language itself. Yeah? It cannot be done in any other way. So actually, language is there. Language is in most of that stuff. And in that sense, I think Marta was right saying that if you look at the data value chain a little more closely, then you will see that without language it's impossible. And one of the outcomes actually of this Dachstuhl meeting with the semantics people was that the semantic web people said, yeah, it's pretty clear without language, because the main, if you think about it, the main reason for doing semantic web is not to throw documents at people, but to give answers, to give answers to information needs, to provide the real an explanation, an answer, a fact or something to people. But if they cannot understand it, what use is it? Yeah? So of course it has to be a language. Yeah? So it has to be. So let me one word on this topic of social intelligence. You need business intelligence is quite a broad view. The part of quite a broad concept. The part of the concept that is closest to what we are interested in now, or what we are working on in language technology, is tapping into the wealth of data that you can analyze with language technology, and in the end condense the data so that you can provide knowledge, like a military intelligence, information, very valuable information, right at the place where it's needed, yeah? Right at the place, at the right time, and you save lots of money by not making wrong decisions and so on. But if you take it a little broader, of course, many organizations need to understand their constituents, yeah? Clients, customers, citizens, students, consumers. And they need to interpret their opinions. And it's not only now about news or authoritative sources, but it's also about social media. It's about opinions, communications. Yeah, you need their experience, their demands, their claims. But on the other hand, there's in business intelligence, the other part is missing, namely the people themselves. So we did lots of business intelligence projects, for instance, even market research, yeah, where we look at, but it's always going to the decision maker of the businesses. But the people in the social life, we are more talking about e-democracy, about participation in the patients. They are organizing themselves in self-help groups. The students are organizing themselves, and so on. Stakeholders in decision processes. So they are also part of the problem of the process, not of the process. They're part of the solution. And so, but in order to do this, they need to be informed, and they need to be able to talk to each other. And some of you have heard my example, but I give it again. But when we had the Fukushima accident, we were all searching through the social media when that happened in Japan, because there was lots of discussion in Europe. Yeah? In Europe, people were more afraid than in Japan, I can tell you, much more. Yeah? So in Japan, they were calmer. But in Europe, they were afraid that the nuclear cloud would hit them next day, and there was lots of discussion. But the discussion never went across language boundaries. So the French only discussed with the French, the Finnish only with the Finnish, and so. But we know, because we have Schengen Treaty, radioactivity can travel. Yeah, so that's not. So it's and where I lived at that point in Saarbrücken, the next nuclear power plant is in France, not in Germany. But I was on the German side. Yeah? So, but the French came to completely different conclusions in this discussion than the Germans. Yeah? So clearly, if we want to have a European discussion, and if we want this, that needs to be cross-boundary and cross-language boundary. So this part, and social intelligence then should have both parts in the decision-making. The decision makers make better decisions, let them make better decisions, but also let the participants and the stakeholders in informing their opinions and putting up their pressure be more informed, and use the decisions and this, because the worst is participatory democracy with uninformed people. Then it's the end of democracy. So if we ever want to go to that place, they need to be informed, so they need to be also the same instruments, because their decisions are then, even if they have to be aggregated, as important as the decisions of the decision makers. So this would be kind of the core of this social intelligence and e-participation part. But now let me wrap up and tell you our next steps now are to present the strategic research agenda starting next week actually, and then from then on wherever we have a possibility to present it at all the important meetings, the decision-making meetings for Horizon 2020 and also for the other program that Marta mentioned, Connecting Europe Facility. Then address the public, meet with national and EU research planners. We did this last week in Riga with the Baltic states. It was a very successful meeting, and to go on and do this with others. Mobilize even more industries, mainly the user industries. They don't know, many users don't know that they are prospective users, so you have to tell them, oh, you're a prospective user, and then they are surprised that you have to tell them why. And then the next step would be, of course, to realize the plan. So what does the whole thing cost? It's gigantic what it costs. It's hundreds of millions and probably even altogether with an infrastructure more than $1 billion. But actually it's as much as 100 to 150 kilometers motorway, and for such an important European part. And Europe has funded thousands of kilometers of motorway without even thinking too much about it. So, but the nice thing is that we don't need any additional fundings, because in Horizon 2020 and in Connecting Europe Facility, it's already in. These topics, for instance, down in Horizon 2020, inclusive, innovative, secure societies, that has the space for that, for language technology is already in. So the conclusion is then, we have worked out a strategic research agenda for language technology research and innovation that can put Europe ahead of its competitors in important technology area. If we cannot be ahead of a competitor in any of these areas, then we should stay home. We should at least try hard. And that will provide useful and attractive solutions to European society, and at the same time create huge business opportunities for industry, so that in the end, preserving the cultural and linguistic diversity of Europe, and helping also to realize this dream that the people, independent of their language, will have equal participation in decision-making as stakeholders, independent of what language they speak, and combining this together with building the next generation of information technology that, according to many of its visionaries, will have as a new, or as a core component in powerful new capabilities of dealing with knowledge, language, and emotion. The next generation of technology, that is one of the hallmarks, one of the major parts. Combining these two things, these stories will really help us not to do very, very fruitful research in one of the most exciting areas in technology and fundamental research, but also help us to become useful to our societies, something we can brag with at cocktail parties or at family units, so that we are part and do something useful for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for this most insightful lecture. And let me now ask if we have any questions or comments to Professor Uszkoreit's lecture? Yes, please. It seems that we have to think of
This is so nice if you can give a talk, if you have a content talk, yeah, then people would say go back to slide 10. Is that part in the formulary right? If you give a talk like this, that's very nice. I will switch. I will only give you thoughts.
No formulas, no questions regarding slide number 11. Okay, yes, please, sure. Dr. Piasecki, if I am correct. Yeah, that's him.
Maciej Piasecki from Wrocław University of Technology. I have one maybe not minor comment, but if there are no other questions. You show the slides showing the number of papers published on top conferences and top journals, but I would like to comment that maybe it's a little bit misleading because it's very difficult to get a paper published in this conference of top journals concerning only one language. So very often reviewers just comment that this is only for such a language somewhere, so it's not so important. It's a niche work. So, many times researchers are, just need to prove their methods in English. So there's also maybe extending the number of conferences and journals would give better picture. But really, yeah, situation of language resources for technology for many European languages not good.
Before I will admit that you are right in certain ways, I will refute the other stuff that you're saying. So you can very well publish on a single language if it's English, yeah. So it has been shown in other cases. So the second thing I wanted to say, just recently, for the last couple of years, the ACL and also the EMNLP, the CONNEL and other communities have become aware of a bias, yeah. And they try now very hard when it comes to other languages. That may have been true for 10 years ago. In the last years, there are even papers now on dead languages at ACL, or on languages with very few speakers, and so that has really changed now, fortunately. But then, of course, you are right in that sense that this doesn't show that there is no research. Yeah? That should be because, of course, there are researchers doing very good work on Latvian, on Estonian, on the small languages, and so on. And at some place, these things are published. What I want to say is that the same, we may call it second rank or third rank publication fora also exists for English. Yeah? If we do the whole thing again, then the numbers are not going to change that much, unfortunately, if we go down. And also, why shouldn't it be possible more often, because some of the very good papers in the recent years, yeah, on language technology came actually working on papers other than English. Yeah? So why shouldn't it be possible to have a top level paper on Polish? Polish is such an interesting language.
It is interesting indeed. Thank you. Any more questions? If not, thank you again, Professor Uszkoreit, for your outstanding lecture.